Yeah. So before we officially start, I wish to acknowledge that we're of the traditional owners. For me, it's the Jva Energizer, but also acknowledge the traditional owners on the land in which you are watching and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Firstly, thank you to Breanne and Gerard for their time, and hopefully they'll be quite enlightening to us this evening about their first little steps into regenerative agriculture and holistic farming. I met both these guys on my second day with the Shire in this role as they started the course on the 16th of September last year. So it's just over 12 months ago. So without any further ado, we'll start with Breanne, and tonight's session will be an interview type session with a few slideshows that hopefully you'll be able to see throughout. That was based on some feedback that we got from the first series on showing a bit more detail around where people are farming. So Breanne, firstly, welcome. And currently we have a picture up here of your property. And when did you start or move to this property, and how many and what stock do you have on there?
Okay, so I personally moved to it about 4.5 years ago. And my partner had been here for probably another 4 years or so before that. So yeah, all up 8 years we've been managing it. So at the moment, well, from the beginning, since moving here, it's had Highland cattle on it. My partner has stud breeding with the Highland cattle, and more recently we've got a few horses on it, specifically some Highland ponies as well.
And when you started the course that I met you with, it said one of the questions was, how do you currently move your cattle? And your answer was, currently cattle are just moved when pasture looks low or cattle want to move, if there is another ungrazed paddock available.
Yeah, that's pretty good, yeah.
So what else can you tell us about this particular property that we're looking at? You know, the lay of the land.
Yeah, well, it's a very old horse property, as in there's stables and arenas and stuff on it. It has 6 big paddocks, so 15 to 20 acres in size, and 5 smaller paddocks that are about 4 to 5 acres, as well as a few much smaller paddocks kind of around the house area. And we're pretty much on the side of a hill. So it's very hilly, and there's obviously lots of dams, as you can see, and creeks running through it and such. So, yeah.
And a fair few older type remnant gums and things like that. Is that what they are on some of the property?
Yeah, all of the trees you can see up the back there, they're all very old gum trees. All apart from the poplars going down the driveway and a few pine trees around the house. But yeah, so very old. We haven't planted any since we've been here, which will probably be one of the things I want to look into in the future. But yeah, they're all very old.
So did you say what size the property was?
Oh, 130 acres, sorry.
130 acres. And,
yeah.
And how many animals are you currently running?
We have 7 horses altogether and about 50 cows, including calves and bulls and everything. So,
yeah. And So, so from this, these were some pictures you sent through to me. So it shows that undulating and some of the old trees and the Highland cattle that you currently have. So what do you primarily do with these Highland cattle?
So I'm sure much to Graham's discussed, yeah, they are stud animals and we breed and show them. And obviously the end product is meat. So they are bred for beef. So we sell them as pets, we sell them as breeding stock, and we also sell the meat as well.
And you've got some commercial cattle there, but what are they primarily there to do?
Yeah. So we've got, probably when you were out, Jason, we might have had more, but now we're down to 5 Angus cattle. And they're purely to produce more Highland calves. So they're being recipients for some embryos from North America at the moment. So they've got a good life, but yeah, only one function, unfortunately.
Yeah. So yeah, so it's primarily around producing these stud Highland cows that is a real high focus for the property.
Yeah, definitely. That's the passion and the love, especially for my partner. Like I said, I'm more a recent pain in the butt, trying to put my horses on there instead. So yeah.
Okay. So in this next photo, what were you hoping to point out to people in this one?
So the top one showing a bit of the land, the creek running through, variation with the bits of reeds and stuff in amongst it, but also showing a not ideal stocking rate. Like they're in quite a big area when I was taking those photos last week or whenever it was. And yeah, at the moment we're transitioning them every 2 days, but we just haven't got heaps of grass. So the areas are still quite large at the moment. In the bottom photo, I just took that to remind me to mention the Tyre Feeder that's in there. So we just have single strand temporary electric fence, and the calves walk straight under it, which we encourage because it means we can give them a little bit of pellets, which is to help them out a little bit, give them a bit extra, but it's also to get them used to eating it before weaning. So when we wean them, we break them in, we train them, and if you've already got that inclination to want to eat pellets there, it makes the job a lot easier. So
when you say break them in, what do you mean by breaking them in? What are you trying to do there?
So they all get halter trained, essentially. They all get used to being brushed and petted, and then halter trained and led around a show ring is kind of where we want to get them all to. So
they're used to the human contact.
Yeah, we want them used to it, but also looking for it, because like I said, due to the breed, you attract a lot of people that want pets, so we do want them to be safe, so respectful of people, especially with those horns, but also friendly and comfortable around people, again because of the horns. If you don't want them to react quickly to movement or anything like that.
So with this fencing, is this temporary fencing, is this always something you've done on the property, or is this more recent?
No. This is just since the course that we started earlier in the year. So yeah, like you mentioned previously, they were just in these big, say 20 acre paddocks. And yeah, if they all started standing at the gate mooing at you, it was probably time to move them or give them hay if you didn't have a paddock to move them to. And yeah, that's how we ran it before. But yeah, since earlier this year, we've started doing that. My partner, all this equipment, we were lucky, he on a previous property used it about 20 years ago. So we already had most of the equipment there. although some of it was a bit brittle, so we had to replace a few parts early on, but we're pretty steady now, and it all holds together really well. So yeah, this has definitely just been this year we've been cell grazing this property.
And so you've got these fences out, and you are moving the stock how often?
Yeah, so at the moment they're getting moved every 2 days. The cattle are normally getting rotated around these 6 big paddocks, like I said, 15 to 20 acres. We normally put one long fence down the middle and then feed off fences on the side of that. We do have a forward fence and a back fence. And yeah, we try and make the size of that cell to what we think will be about 2 days, and then adjust as we go if needed. And the horses are the same, but they're in the smaller paddocks because there's less of them. But same thing, we throw one fence down kind of the long, way of the paddock, and then the shorter fences off the side. And they're moved every 2 days. But again, the cell size is just a lot different. Yeah.
Okay, here is a diagram of a picture of some of that material. But before I get you to answer, I've got a question here. We're mentioning a course, and the course that we're mentioning is the Regen grazing course, with Graham Hand and Colin Seiss. So thanks to one of my helpers there. They've mentioned that in the chat feature as well. The next one, applications close tomorrow. So if you are interested in what you've heard throughout our series of talks or this evening, please go and apply to the course, mainly targeted at Macedon Ranges Shire Council applicants. The course is almost full. So here is these equipment. What equipment is it? And yeah, how easy and is it to use and put up, and how much time do you spend there putting it up? What are some of you talked about it being brittle initially after a bit of age in it, but what were some of the problems as well that you encountered early on with moving fences? And
yeah, so this is the Kiwi tech system. It's from New Zealand, obviously. So you just get it online. They have tutorials and everything on there as to how to use it. It's very smart, the way they do it, and it is very strong. Like I said, yes, it was brittle after 20 years, but I think that's a pretty good lifespan. So, and I think pretty much all the poles we're still using. It was just the connectors that you can see actually in both pictures, at the top of the pole and the thing that's holding the reel on the fence. So they're essentially the exact same type of connector. So like I said, it's a very intelligent system, and it uses these connectors for multiple purposes. We found some of them snapped, but since we've got the new ones, it's not been an issue at all. So it takes a little bit until you get used to it. So it's not fiddly as such, but yeah, once you've had a bit of practice, you find yourself being very efficient at it. And yeah, just pay attention to the detail of certain angles of things, like that end post in the picture, that should be bent back a little bit more. Like there's certain things like that can help but give it more rigidity as well. And that post.
These are just tread-ins, are they? So you just stand on them, you don't have to whack them in, and then you just put this 45 on?
Yeah, they're both just tread-ins. And yeah, the one that's on the angle, that's just one of your normal posts that would, go up the paddock. Again, the little clip on the end of it is just, again, multifunctional. It just clips onto the end post and holds it in. So the challenges we had initially, well, pretty much the only time things broke was when kangaroos were going through it. There was a time when I set up 3 fences in a paddock, turned around, a kangaroo jumped through all 3 and knocked all of them down, and I just threw my thing on the ground and stormed off. Well, that's it, I'm done. But in general, that was because we had old string, old connectors, and sometimes it broke. But normally if a kangaroo's jump through it, the whole thing just bends. So it does bounce back. Well, that's what it's designed to do. It's a very smart system. You can use it anywhere. The reel, you can see the connector just pops into those little holes either side, and you just sit the wire on the electric fence somewhere. Yeah, right there, it's connecting the electric fence. And then it just goes along to that end post, and you set up your posts every 20 meters. Pop a post in, the string just slides into your posts as you go. You've got a mechanism to use, like it holds your poles and it holds a reel and it winds the reel up and everything. So practice makes it easier, definitely. But we had some challenges with, it took a while for the animals to get used to it. Obviously it's electric, it hurts, don't walk through it. But also, yes, we want you to walk over it when we say it's okay. So we do try and train them. We just go along with 2 of the posts and just pin it down. So like I said, it bends. So you just pin it down, they walk over it, you pick up the posts and walk away, and that's it. They've moved to the next cell. So it took a little bit to get them used to walking over it, but if they're hungry enough, once the lead cow goes over, they'll fly over, they're fine. And now they're very well trained with it. The ponies, I think, are almost even better. They seem to associate that sometimes even when the fence is on the ground, they think they can only walk over it if you're standing there. So they'll actually still respect it, even when it's hanging half on the ground, if, something's broken or a kangaroo's pulled it out. And then as soon as you rock up, they're like, oh, okay, and they just wander over.
So you say you're moving them every couple of days. So on average, how long would it take you, to set it up for maybe a week, and then obviously just moving them, every couple of days? What can you give us a sense of the time scale to do these?
Yeah, so the 2 daily move between both of them probably takes half an hour. We move them to the next cell, grab their back fence from their previous cell and move it forward to produce their next cell ongoing. And then the setup to set up a whole paddock, at the moment, probably because we're running that temporary long fence down the paddock, because our paddocks aren't the perfect size, that probably takes us a good hour to do each paddock like that. Yeah. The plumbing, you'll get to that, but that took a long time. But now that it's set up, that's easy, that's quick.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're going to the plumbing bit now. So with any of these things, how do we get water to them is always an interesting one. And I just found it hilarious the day I was out visiting you, 6 or so months ago, probably 9 months ago, that a horse was banging on top of this trough, and that horse is still doing it, trying to wreck the troughs.
Yeah, it didn't take much to get her to do it again. You put fresh water in there, I don't know, she thinks she's got a play in it. So, we just have a line, 1-inch poly running down, again, the centre of the paddock. And every 40 metres, there's one of those little T-pieces that you're circling, Jason. And then the trough plugs into that. The trough is a brand called Python. You can get it on the Kiwi Tech website as well. They work in conjunction, and it just plugs into that T-piece quite happily. That one's got a 9-metre hose on it, but I believe you can get longer. The float, we find them really good, and in fact now they're the only troughs we can use with that naughty grey filly in that picture there. Because if she pulls that valve, that float valve out, the water actually stops. So without it in there, it won't function. Whereas all our other permanent troughs that we've got around the place, if she breaks the floats, which she constantly does, the water keeps flowing, which is an issue. So yeah, that's what we use. And we just move that each time we move the paddock, we move it to the next point if we need to.
Question about, I'm not sure whether it's the electric fence units or these troughs, but I'll go with the troughs. What sort of price range are we looking at for that particular setup? Just not, of course, from underground, get the water to the point, but the trough and the arm.
I actually don't know, Jason. Sorry, I'd have to look that up.
Yep.
I could possibly get back to you by the end of this if you like.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll take that on notice, and we'll get back to you. But it'll be all on their website, Kiwi Tech, whatever the Kiwi Tech is website is. Just one of the suppliers of electrical fencing. This is the one Breanne has chosen to use. As you can see in the background in some of these photos, there's the old trees, paddock trees in declining, some in declining health, some okay. Yeah. So, but again, just a bit of a picture of also horses that are quite happily respecting the electric fences.
Yes. Yeah.
What are we looking at? The one question I did have, I'll go back. One of the issues you were having was hot water with the pipes, that 9 metres or 10 metres of pipe above ground and other pipes initially. How have you gone with hot water, black pipe sitting out in the sun?
Well, yeah, initially, so all our poly running down the paddocks is above ground. So that was, yeah, more the issue with that was heating up during summer when we first installed it. We didn't find it had an effect on the cattle. At that point, we weren't doing the horses, but the cattle, they just seemed to get by with it. It didn't have any issues with their production. I don't know if they just come and drink it at night. I would go out and tip the trough out and, you know, do it a couple of times until there was cool water flowing back into it. And, you know, I might have one or two walk over, but it wasn't like they were all hanging around waiting for it. Since then, the 100 metre lengths of poly just over time just seemed to sink into the ground a bit more. So, well, as you can see in that picture, you can't even see the poly running down the paddock. You can only see that 9 metre length. So, yeah, the 9 metre length, it wouldn't be enough to, you know, deter the whole tank of trough from the animals. And, well, my horse seems to do the job of refilling it constantly enough that their water doesn't get hot.
Yeah.
So, not an issue.
Not an issue. Okay. No. So, these few photos, what are we having a look at here with these ones?
So top left is a before photo in the paddock. The horses are grazing at the moment. And that was just a random spot in the paddock, not an exceptionally good or an exceptionally bad spot. But yeah, there is obviously a lot of kangaroo poo in amongst that. We do have significant amounts of kangaroos on our property. And yeah, you can see that, you know, I would much prefer to have a lot more grass than that before grazing it. But that's just where we're at the moment. And then the bottom picture is post. So that's a cell out of the cell that's being grazed right next door. And yeah, you can see the horse poo in it. So that's at the point at which we're moving them at the moment.
How do you judge that whether you've eaten enough or not eaten enough or?
We just want to make sure the ground still has good coverage. So we're trying to leave the litter behind, like was mentioned in the course we did earlier in the year. Yeah, I guess we just don't want it to get down to, you know, the nub of the grass. But yeah, we're trying to leave 3-4 centimeters on, and yeah.
Yep. And here, what are we looking at on these ones?
Here is the cow paddock that they've just come out of. So that top one is just grazed. And then the next one down is, I think that's about a week post-grazing. We do have a lot of clover coming through for some reason. And then that one's more like 10 to 12 days post-grazing. And then the dog, I just took a picture of the luscious grass we've kind of got in a paddock at the moment. That's our best paddock with the best grass. So just an example of that's the best we're getting right now. But yeah, we still want to improve on that.
And just going back 12 months, would that be something that you would have had on the property 12 months ago, or is this a step forward? This is where you'd like to get to, but you still haven't quite got there all over the farm. But
yeah, that's definitely a step forward for us. In fact, a lot of that area where the dog's standing in was weeds and stuff before, like annuals, which would shoot up, and then they'd be dead for half the year, and then they'd shoot up again. And but yeah, it seems to be, obviously you can still see capeweed in amongst that, but yeah, it definitely seems to be a lot more lush and happier there. That's one of the horse paddocks as well, and they don't seem to eat that grass down as hard, so it does have a better chance than most of the other paddocks at the moment.
So just a couple of questions before we move on to Gerard. Have you thought of grazing the cattle and the horses together?
Oh yeah, we did. We tried it a couple of times, and we do have a couple of young horses who like to run around of a night, at dusk. They all get a bit frisky and run around, and the cattle don't like it, and they end up breaking through fences. So we persisted for a little while. We just went, okay, we've got to rethink this. So what we've recently done is we're just swapping them. So at the moment, like I've talked about, the cow paddocks and the horse paddocks, but literally I think tomorrow the cows will be moved into the horse paddocks, and they'll have a go at eating all them down. And at the moment the horses are in one of the cow paddocks. So we're just going to do that instead and kind of rotate them so that we can still get multi-species on the same paddock without having them in there at the same time.
Yeah. And so what recovery periods are you now looking at and that you've now achieved, and what's the goal going forward?
Well, through winter we were probably only getting 3 months recovery for the cow paddocks. The horses was a bit more, maybe 4 months, but we were really aiming for more like 9 to 11 months kind of thing. So that's where we're aiming at this stage. For the next 12 months, I think we're just going to keep on a similar course. We have sold quite a few animals during this as well, so we've destocked a bit. So I think we're going to see how that goes, throughout a whole year, because we haven't experienced spring during this before. We've only experienced past summer and then ongoing. And then, over the next, 5 years, we really want to aim to extending that recovery period.
Okay, excellent. What advice, so here's a question from Edward, what advice would you give to someone starting from scratch? Say, for example, one big 100-acre paddock, no power or other water supply, a lot of kangaroos and a central driveway and one dam in the middle. Seems a very specific 100-acre paddock here.
Probably first step is get your water sorted. That was kind of the biggest thing for us. Allow yourself that flexibility. Whether you do something like what we've done, or I think 100 acres, you probably have to do something similar. And yeah, and work from there and get your temporary fences. Yeah.
So with your water, you just laid it out up on top for a start. Was there reasoning behind that other than maybe time pressure? Was it just to see how it went, or was it just get it done and we'll see how it goes? Or
that's actually just how the system works. So all the pipes leading to the paddocks are all underground, but from the paddock through the paddock, it's above ground. That is just how that system works, because you plug it straight into that T-piece. And yeah, I think they just rely on it kind of burying itself in under the grass a little bit. Yeah, I think they just see it as a non-issue kind of thing.
And then there's a statement of question. If you have to put up a perimeter fence, it says make it roo-proof is one other piece of advice here to think about if you've got a starting from scratch paddock. Is there anything else do you with the electric power that's a 240 volt from sort of the house or shed that you generate, or do you have a solar unit that generates the power for those fences?
No, it all comes from the shed. Yeah, we've just got the Energizer in the shed. We have, and I would probably recommend this because I'm so used to it now. We have an app on our phone that connects to it, so we can turn it off and on whenever we want. It's called a Jva Energizer, and that's really handy.
Yeah.
So when you're doing this temporary fencing and, you don't want to walk all the way to the end of the paddock and do the cut-off switch or whatever you've got going. So, yeah.
Well, I haven't heard of that. That's terrific.
Handy.
Awesome. Thanks, Bree. We'll now move on to Gerard. And if you've got any questions, I didn't say at the start, type them into the chat feature. And if you've got questions for Bree later on, Bree will stick around after Gerard and we'll ask them both some questions then as well. So keep typing in your questions into the chat feature and we'll keep following up. It's time now to welcome Gerard. And I've started the presentation with this photo that I received in April, and it was a text from Gerard saying he's working in isolation, so it wasn't lockdown 1.0. He was doing it fairly hard. And when I met Gerard, one of the things again he wrote when he started the course was how are you managing at the moment? He strip grazes with a long rest. And it would be good to know what to do a bit better. So always trying to learn something, it sounded like. So Gerard, welcome.
Thank you.
And let's start off. Now, let's start off with these cows. What were these ones?
Okay. My core animals are Herefords. I produce beef cattle. And then I alternate the bulls. So I have a Limousin bull, and then I'll go an Angus bull, and then a Hereford. So I'm trying for the hybrid vigour. So these guys obviously from the Angus bull. And they're very friendly. They're approaching 2 years, these guys now. They're pushing 450, 500 kilos. I'll be thinking soon they might have to take a truck, and that'll be sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
We get along well, and that's because I move them every day.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're not putting them on the halter or anything like Bree's.
No, I'm commercial.
Yeah. Yeah. So you gave me these few photos of the property.
Yes.
January '89. So what's your history, and when did you start farming this property?
All right, I bought the property in November '96. This is taken from an aerial photograph that I used for doing a whole farm planning course that the Shire ran years ago. As you can see, if we look at the right-hand photo, you can see at the top left-hand corner, there's the house and a couple of sheds. And that's in, yeah, that's right. And that's in a little house paddock. And I've only ever run sheep in that because I don't want cows right up around the house. To the right of that is another little paddock, which I used to call the 6 acre paddock. There, to the right, there you go. That was the 6 acre paddock, and that was quite handy, and that's actually soon to be the bull paddock. And then below that, the rest of it was all the rest of the 100 acres. And as you can see, it's it's heavily wooded with a couple of pines and hawthorns and a couple of poplars. A few years later, if we look now at the left-hand photo, no, go back please. Yep, on the left-hand photo down the bottom, you'll see there's the second 100 acres down the bottom, and there's a couple of pines. Now looking at the left-hand photo, that whole bottom area was just one paddock. Yeah, that's correct. That was another one paddock. So I basically had 2 big paddocks, and you can see there's a creek line, or basically a drainage line, going down through the centre. Right, first thing I did was water. So I was fortunate here in this country that we've got fairly good bore water. So there was a bore near the house, and then I pumped to the highest ridge, which is where those trees are. Down, no, up, to your left. No, oh, just to your left. Yeah, that just there. That's where the highest point. So I pumped to a water tank there, and then I gravity fed that to the various paddocks. All right. Then my next focus was to split it up. And I basically split the property up via the topography. So where the cursor is at the moment, that's the high point. So I basically fenced all that off and put trees in, planted trees. Along the creek line, I fenced all that off and put trees. Basically, I did that because it's heavy black basalt country, and it was just getting pugged up by the cattle too much. So I planted that out. And then from there, I split it up into paddocks based on the soil types as best I could determine. I was also keen, because it was fairly open, and the property name was Coolalai, which is supposedly Aborigine for windy place, and that summed it up. So I was keen to put trees in. So we've put quite a lot of trees in, basically, for windbreaks predominantly, but also a bit of revegetation, which will be seen in a later photo. How many paddocks we're up to now on that? Oh, what are we on that side? I think that's now 22 paddocks. Well, actually, I'll go back a step. In about 2005, Mr. Vic Rose decided this would be a good spot to put a freeway, so we got split in half. Yeah, there we go. Great. So looking at that photo, we can see the freeway going through the guts of it. The big lot of trees on the top left, that's the hill where I've got the water tank. Oh, that's it. Yeah, that's where the water tank. So I'll pump to there and then gravity feed to troughs. The freeway, because I had troughs on the other side of the freeway, they put a conduit under there for me, so I do have water from the house that goes to the other side of the freeway. A problem with the freeway was, prior to that, I was running about 60 breeders, and I was turning off vealers at about 9-10 months at the Kyneton store sale, so that sort of market. The freeway going through made that a lot more difficult. So what I do now is, on the house side, I run cows and calves, then I move them to the other side. If we look to the bottom of those photos, you can see a dam and a road. Well, because of the freeway, I was actually able to buy these 2 paddocks just above that road, and then combine that. So with that, on the house side, cows and calves. The other side, I grow them out till about 2 years, which are those cows we saw earlier. So I grow them out and then sell them as steers or and heifers, about 500, 550 plus kilos. I have had a go at cows and calves, and that was terrific. But the problem is because they're on the other side of the freeway, it was a lot more difficult to check, and the yards weren't as good. And just with the risk of that, I just reckon the return wasn't worth it. So now I just sell them as heifers, and hopefully they go to other farmers because they're nice, quiet animals, but that's not really my call.
So with the split of the farm with the freeway,
yes.
How long is it to go from the house up here to this paddock over here?
Okay, it's 13 kilometres return.
Yep.
Yeah, that's because I have to go into Malmesbury over the bridge and out the other side. Yeah.
Down this road here.
All right, I might just on that, a couple of other things about the property. Rainfall, 633 millimetres average. I've been taking rainfall since I've been there. The worst year I've had was 2015, 416 mil. Best was 2010, 1093, and that actually was the most difficult because I had the grass was so long, it was shorting out all the fences. Soils, heavy black basalt, pH between 5.5, 5.7, carbon 1.3 to 4.1%. And as, right, what else? Trees, as you can see, yeah, these are good examples of that. We've put in quite a few trees over the years, and certainly looking at both of those photos, you can see now that the paddocks have predominantly got trees around them, and I've really tried to orientate the trees to protect from the southerlies. And that's handy in the summer because it protects from the northerlies. And the shelter really does make a difference. You give up a bit of country for the trees, but gee, you gain a lot. So I think it's well worthwhile. Looking at the right-hand side, you'll see that the paddocks are red. Well, that's something that Jason's done for me that's worth talking to Jason about, because he's actually calculated the paddock size and we put numbers on them, and that's really helped me work out from the course we've done how long I need to graze each paddock. Now going back again, prior to the course, I've been strip grazing since 96, or as soon as I could. I got into that pretty early, so I've strip grazed after putting the water in. I've done that all the time. I've aimed for a year before they came back to the same paddock. I don't plough. I do pasture improvement just by direct seeding, so spray with glyphosate and sow down. And predominantly it's been annual ryegrass, which comes away quick, and then probably a year or two later I'll sow down with Phalaris, and we'll see some photos later of the Phalaris, and that's really worked well. And I get a lot of feed out of that. Yeah, what else was I going to say? Yeah, lime. I've put lime over the whole property, 2 tonne to the hectare. Some places have done that a couple of times. I haven't seen any movement in the pH. I used to put super down, 400 kilos to the hectare with NPK. Didn't see any improvements out of that. Yeah, strip graze. I've done no fodder conservation since 1999. I just move them around and try and take the whole year. The only hay I buy is just for weaners, just the yard weaning. So I might buy a few rounds a year, and that's all I use. Cattle numbers at the moment, well, because of the course, one of the things that's come out of that, and what I'm aiming to do, is get more feed ahead of me by leaving more feed behind me. But to do that, that's one of the things from the course, was back off the numbers. So running at about 50 to 66% of carrying capacity. So I'm cutting the numbers down. The advantage of that means it's easier to get through the tough years, I'm hoping. So at the moment, I'm running just under 30 breeders, and that's easily getting through, and I'm pretty confident I'm building up the feed wedge ahead of me than when I was running higher numbers. And then I move them to the other side. So with 25 to 30, that means I'll be running sort of 50 head on the other side. And I think that's starting to improve things.
So before we move off
All right.
of these pictures here with the trees, we learned in seminar number 1 with Sam that he grazes underneath some of these trees. What's your experience with grazing underneath trees or in areas that you've just locked up and left?
All right. Looking at the big lot of trees to the low right, of the house, I do graze under that each year, and that's been really useful. In an earlier drought, I think 2004 or something, other people were buying hay, I was buying electric fence stuff, so I could, and I'll just move the electrics every day to protect certain, the smaller trees. Now when I graze under it, the ukes I don't have to worry about, but I do protect the acacias because the cattle make short work of them, they really knock them around. And when I graze in there, I'll set up the electrics for whatever that day is, put them in, and then I'll kick them out of a night, and then the next morning go back and just have it into a little holding sleeping area, then remove it a bit, put them in, kick them out, and that's worked really well. To cleans up under it, and they get plenty of good feed. And it's actually what's actually happened under there particularly is a lot of natives, particularly blue devils, have come up and other herbs. So that's been a good sort of thing under there. And also what I find too is where you graze the cattle under the trees, you get better regeneration. I suppose their hooves breaking up the soil and clearing it. So you get, particularly of the acacias, it's worked really well. I haven't really grazed in the windbreaks, basically because they're a bit too narrow. I don't really think there's not enough in there to make it worth my while to put them into those areas.
So back, if we go back 12, 15 months, what made you start the course? What made you think?
Okay, well, yes, I'd heard about regenerative agriculture. I'd bought a couple of books, which I read, and I thought they were interesting books, and I think I lent them to some bloke somewhere, and one day I might even get them back.
You might.
But no, that was all fine. But there was all this stuff, and I said, most of this stuff they're talking about, I'm doing. I'm not ploughing, I'm strip grazing, but I'm not getting all these benefits. What am I doing wrong? What am I missing out on? So that's when this course came up. That's what I was keen to go on and find out. What extra do I have to do or not do, or what's the missing link?
And so since the course, I there's some photos here since the course, and what I've said here is the experiments have started. So what experiment did you start here in November, and what does these pictures show?
Oh, all right. Well, on the very first session of the course, the group came out to my place. I volunteered, and that's one of the things I always do, because if you go first, you're the benchmark, so you can't be too bad. And we had a look at a little paddock, and I thought it was all right, but Graham and Colin weren't so impressed. And one of the things Graham said to Colin, if this was your paddock, what would you do? And I'll go back another step. I strip grazed the cow side of the freeway every day because it was easy, but these cows on the other side, I just rotationally graze. I'd be in a paddock for a week or so, and then I'd move them out. And I was hitting the paddocks pretty hard. I wanted to get around the year, and I thought it was best to really clean it up. But Colin's answer was he would split it up, the bigger paddocks, with light fences into 50-metre strips and then strip grazing. So that paddock on the left there, I did that, and you can see the cow. So it was just this side of those cows, you can see a yellow. Well, that's a strip, a 50-metre strip that they've already been down. And if you look at the cows, they're in almost a square, so they're in a nice tight bunch, and that's their day's portion. All right, and then there'll be another, and I'll just move that with electrics, but the actual was almost a semi-permanent electric fence. You can see the steel post there. And in fact, so light that if we go back to the left-hand photo, just over the fence, you'll see there, that's right. All I've used for the end assembly was a steel post and another steel post banged into the ground and then bent to form an end assembly. Cheap as chips, and it works pretty well. So that was one of the first things I did, and I put the cows in that paddock, and I'd usually get I'd aim for 2 weeks out of that paddock. By doing that method, I got 6 weeks, and that's huge. And I think part of it was you just put them in there for a week, and they run around and eat all the good stuff, and then like Brie, they're bellowing at the gate. But this way, it's just strip grazing, but they have to eat. They get good stuff every day, but they have to eat all the crap. So they just cleaned it up a lot better, and it worked really well. Okay, on the right, well, what we're looking at there, that's the same thing. We can see the cows on one side, and on the left is where they've just finished. Okay, I look at that now, and I thought at that stage I was leaving a lot of trash. I'm aiming to leave a lot more than that now. That's one of the things I've learned.
So
okay.
Here we've got what's happening sort of more consistently now in June 2020. What was this March?
Oh, that was a trial, a sacrifice area. That was just one of Graham's suggestions. Fence off a little area and go for super high stocking rate. So I don't know, there was 30 odd cows and calves put in there for a couple of hours, and they grazed it right down. So that was just a photo of what they'd done. And then, yeah, they won't see that again for 12 months. So that's what that was, just a sacrifice area. And then on the right, that's one of my Fertilizers paddocks. So that's the same thing. I'm moving them regularly. And the foreground that's the amount of trash that I'm trying to leave now. So I'd say that's 1,200 kilos per hectare. What do you reckon, Jason?
Yeah, at least.
Yep. Yeah, so I'm aiming for that or a bit more. I mean, you'll have a good bit there, but then there'll be another bit back a bit, and there'll be, they've eaten it a bit hard. I don't know what the answer to all that is, but overall, I think it's going all right. Now, one of the things I'm gaining out of this too, because I used to eat it really hard, I was pushing the cattle hard, and I thought that was a good thing. But the cows much prefer this new system of leaving 1,200 because they're a lot fuller and they're doing well. And that'll also mean, I'm pretty sure, that it should be easy to get them in calf too. I think I was pushing them a bit hard before sometimes.
And so, yeah, so this is you just...
Yeah, so I just use the Waratah electrics. So I have, permanent, Gallagher electrics. I have permanent electric fences, and then I'll just have these tapes and I'll just wind them up, and my cows won't go near it. Any bit of white string they won't touch. And I love nothing better than a newborn calf touching an electric wire and going, and jumping backwards, because you never have problems with him again.
Yeah, I was going to try and show just how easy it is with you winding it up, but I can't seem to get it when it's in this presentation mode yet, even though we're able to do it the other day, last night. Yeah, so what's this sort of fence line down here that...
Okay, what's happening there? To the left, that's where they'd come out of. The reason it's a bit boggy there, that's the bottom end of the paddock. You can't see it in the photo, but to the left of that, it's a fallen down bluestone wall. So that acts as a bit of a dam, and so it's always a bit muddier there. But that single wire is to stop them back grazing, going back over. So that's one of the other things I've learned, is before I'd strip graze, but they could be in a paddock for a month, and then they'd be going over eating all the regrowth. Now I have a back wire so that 3 days max, and they can't get back onto it. And I think that's making a difference. You can really see it around the paddocks. But it means I've got to make sure I give them a bit more, and I have to give them more, so I'm leaving the 1,200 kilos to the hectare. So that's just a single back wire to stop them going back, and I find that's enough. But I usually have 2 in front to stop them sneaking under, because you get a couple of cows and they'll be sneaky and they'll get down on their knees and try and reach under. And if it's off, they might work out they can get through, and I don't want that to happen.
So this paddock here where we're sort of showing, it's about a 3 hectare paddock. Would that be about right, this one?
Yeah, that's about right.
And how many stock? You got the 30 breeders?
Yeah, about 30 breeders.
And how many allocations did you get out of that?
I think I was getting on to 3 weeks. 3 weeks from memory. So, yeah. And going on to that, what I'm doing at the moment, because the cows are now calving, I'm actually giving them smaller amounts, but I'm moving them twice daily. And that really gets them in nice and close. And the advantage of that is I'm going around, it's heaps easy to catch the calves, and I mark them on the spot. So I see that as a benefit.
And how we talked with Bree about water. How are you getting water?
All right. So my water, I've got bore water. I do have a couple of dams, but they don't actually have access to them. On this property. So bore water, I pump to a header tank, gravity feed to troughs, and then I have a series of laneways that go back to the trough. And that was always my issue, water. But now what I do is just a temporary electric fence acting as a temporary laneway back to the water. So what's happening here, we have these strips that go up the paddock, and each strip is 3 days worth, but they get moved within it each day. And then at the end of each strip, there'll be a steel post that sort of becomes part of the laneway as we move up the paddock. The laneway can get a bit bogged up, especially in winter, but you just have to make it wider. And that's what I'm doing for water.
Yep. So no need to change the investment. It was just a matter of using the portable strip fence to...
Yeah. And I've found it really hasn't been that much extra work, because it used to be I'd strip graze this paddock and I'd have to do the strip all the way across it every day. Now I do the strip all the way across it every 3 days. So if anything, I'm saving work.
Yep.
And there are just the little ones going up each day. They're minimal. It's only 40, 50 metres across. Move that onto the next one.
Okay.
I've actually made it simpler. And then when you move them up, well, the fence, you just leave one of the wires as the back wire and just put the next one up. So it's pretty straightforward.
Oh, there it goes. It's working.
Yeah. Yeah, watch these guys now. Oh, the wire's gone. Let's go. You'd think they'd eat the front, wouldn't you?
So what's interesting to me is how respectful they are of the fence being wound up. That they're not, they know that that's all going to happen, and they'll just take their time. And as always, go to the furthest point before turning around and coming back.
Yeah.
So that's and this next one.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for this. This actually, on one of our little field days, one of the other attendees mentioned that somewhere in Africa they're putting in trees in the middle of paddocks, and I thought, what a great idea, because I've been putting trees around the edge and in big blocks, and sometimes like this tree on the right, that's just on a corner of a permanent fence. But now, because of Colin's idea of putting these light electric fences across the paddock 50 metres apart, I've got electrics there. So I've actually, at every 30 metres, so basically 30 metres by 50 metres, I've put in some little eucalypts. So I've already gone into this paddock, and so that'll be really interesting to see how that goes. And when I get around to grazing that again next year, I just intend to use those treading posts and a little bit of electric tape and just temporarily electrify around each tree and then move it to the next strip as I go along. So it's not going to be nothing permanent about it, but I'm hoping in a few years they'll be big enough I won't have to do that anymore, and I'll have shade throughout the paddock. I think it'll be a good thing.
And so you spoke to me about this one is having a higher wire and a lower wire. Why was that?
All right. that's basically protect the tree. If you just have the higher wire, you know, they push under it too much and will damage the tree. And if you just have the lower one, well, they'll reach over the top and damage it. And I've just, yeah, most of my internal permanent fences are now 3 wires, 2 electric and an earth. So that's just hooked up to the 2 electrics. And my earth system is huge. I connect everything to the earth. I've even got the freeway fence as part of my earth system.
So with this one, it's still high enough to let the stock eat the grass around that tree, not too close, but close enough.
They can, yeah, that's right. So they can get their heads under it and clean up around the tree, but they can't put pressure on the tree itself.
So that, unless there's just a couple more questions that I'm going to ask Gerard about his goals and what he's still working on. But if you've got any questions, we'd love to hear those questions through the chat feature. So please start typing them in if you've got any. So Gerard, what are you still working on? And
okay, well, a couple of those trees as a trial. I'm keen to see how that works out. So in a couple of not all the paddocks that I've done this stripping in have I planted yet, but I've done 3 paddocks I have. So we'll see how that goes, and I'll do more next year if that works out. And then the other thing I've trialled is to sow without spraying. So it was basically your idea of eating it off really hard and then over sowing, because I had a paddock of Phalaris and Ariels was a bit light. And so I did that during the week, and we'll just see how that goes. And what I've oversown into that is a mixture of summer and winter active grasses and a good variety. Just be interesting to see how that works. So that's another trial. My goals, I suppose my goals from this is just to better grass production, which means better cattle performance. And I'm hoping that'll reduce the risk in poor seasons because you've got more feed ahead of you. And then in the long run, a few years, I'll be hoping that it means a higher carrying capacity, and a higher carrying capacity means more kilos per hectare you turn off, and that's just higher profit that you can put back into the place or into other things. So I suppose that's what I'm aiming at. And I like the trees, and I just think it's going to look a lot really good having trees distributed throughout the paddocks, the way things used to be when the whites first turned up here.
So there's a few questions, and thank you for people typing those questions in. So can you explain the purpose of the sacrifice paddock or the cell?
Mine, that little trial area, that was only a small area. What was it? 10 by 10 metres. So if it doesn't work out, well, we haven't lost anything. That's all that was about.
Yeah.
And it was just to really hit it hard, see if it works or not, and it's not really having an adverse effect on your production.
So in the course, Graham Hand talks about safe to fail areas. These are small areas where you can trial different things, and it's about getting stocking rate. I always get stocking rate mixed up, but having a high amount of traffic in a particular area to actually stomp a lot of grass material into the ground and let the bacteria and the fungi and the protozoa and everything else go to work on it and actually start helping with soil regeneration. So another question, what happens to the regrowth if the stock eat the grass down too much in that 1 to 3 days?
Okay, for me, I just try and give them enough feed. So, and this is what I'm trying to work out, try and give them enough feed so they don't eat it all down too much. So it's just trying to balance that. And that's, for me, I suppose it's still a bit of trial and error, but I think I'm getting better at it.
Another question, how high do you let the grass go? Do your neighbours have a point of view about the fire risks?
Yeah, that's an issue. Fire risk, yeah, that's something I really haven't answered yet. I do have that's one of the paddocks along the roads. I do eat those down hard, and especially just to the north of the house to reduce the fire risk. With the course we did last week, one of the things that David said and I liked was putting in a green cover crop in those danger areas. So that's something I might look at.
Yeah. So Patrick spoke about that last week about putting those green crops in around. Yep. What grasses did you plant when you planted your recent plantings?
Okay, it was prairie grass, broom grass, fescue. It was already phalaris there, and we also put in some lucerne. But of those, there was different varieties of each. So there was more summer and active within each. So there was about 6 or 7 varieties all mixed up. But that was also picked for a paddock that's fairly well drained. If I was going for a poorer drained, I would have gone for a different mix.
Do you apply fertilizers to your paddocks? I think you answered that.
I used to. I didn't see a real lot of benefits ever from it, unfortunately. I used to put out 400 kilos to the hectare, but I could never see any difference between that paddock and the one next to it when I was in my trial. So I sort of stopped that.
Did you sow any fertilizer when you sowed your recent
No.
grass?
No. I haven't used fertilizers since 2011.
Have you noticed the return of any native grasses?
Yes, I have. In the fenced off areas where the revegetation is, yes, I have in spots there. Yeah, so wallaby grasses, kangaroo grasses, blue devils, other herbs like that, yes.
And that's where you're still grazing underneath them occasionally?
Yes.
So what was the main difference between that area where you've got your natives growing and the areas where your normal grazing was happening? Your past normal grazing?
Well, it could well be the soil type. That was fenced off because it was a lot rockier and lighter soil, so that could be part of it. Whereas the other areas are generally the heavy black country.
And to be honest, it's probably a little bit to do with the period of grazing. So those times you spoke about giving them an allocation during the day and then taking them out. So they're basically the animals aren't getting an opportunity to have another second or third go.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jason, because they'd only be in there for one day and out, max. Whereas other areas over the last however many years have been doing this, they've always had the chance of back grazing. So there wasn't back grazing happening there. So that's a good point.
Yeah. So that's the main reason why those very palatable, effective native grasses, the stock will target them and graze them. And if they stick their head up, they'll get another whack a week later and another whack a week after that if they get a chance. So that'll be where it, and what I expect to see happen is, Gerard, with this, long recovery periods, but also short grazing periods, we'll see some native grasses start to appear back more than likely.
What's your expectation of that? How long do you think that'll take?
I don't know. Listening to different people, it'll be a few years, but it'll start to happen.
Okay.
So we'll see. Others might have some experience, a bit more experience in that, and they might want to share that through the chat feature for all of us. Another question, you mentioned noticeable response to lime, but what was your soil pH?
It was always 5.5 anyway.
Yeah.
But then I'd put the lime on, a couple of tonne, and I'd go back a couple of years later and it was still 5.5.
Yeah. So thanks very much. I'll wait a couple more minutes for a few more questions. I've exhausted my types of questions to these guys. I'm sure there's lots of others that you lots of other questions you'd like to ask, please shoot away, and or else we'll finish very shortly.
Jason,
Yep.
I looked up those Python troughs. They're about $230 each
Yep.
with the float and hose and everything attached to them.
So you just need to attach a tap to it, or to the riser, and away you go.
Yep.
Excellent. Hopefully that has answered that question. Just while we wait for a couple of, if there's any more questions, just to remind people, this project is the Healthy Landscapes for Healthy Livestock project for residents of the Macedon Ranger Shire. As I said, you've still got an opportunity for one-to-one practical support on your property, which both Breanne and Gerard have taken up at different times, with me giving them some suggestions. The regenerative grazing short course applications, these guys both did that course. Applications close tomorrow, so if you're interested, please apply ASAP. And in mid-November, we've got a webinar following up on our soil, understanding your soil series that we did starting 7 weeks ago. So the next one will be in mid-November to understand those soil tests if you're taking them. So thank you for all of you being part of the session, particularly thanks to Gerard and Bree for today, and for those of you that have joined us over the last 6 webinars. I really appreciate your support. For those of you who have just joined tonight, or in the past, or are watching and are listening to this on YouTube or anything else, thank you very much. I really appreciate the support you've been given. Just as we finish up, just lots of people saying thank you. Do you have a weather station on your farm?
No, I just keep the rainfall and that's all.
Yep, Bree. You just have to unmute Bree.
I actually have.
You've just got.
Sorry. Yes, just rainfall for us as well.
Another question: do you rely? I think that's rely on past experience more than statistics, or statistics?
Yeah. What's that? Was that a question?
Yeah. Do you rely on past experience more or statistics?
Oh, my experience, but my own statistics.
Bree, what's your
past experiences, I would say.
Yeah.
We don't do heaps of stats, although my partner is a stats man, but yeah, no, it's really just what's happening and what's happened in the past. So
Gerard, it seems like you've planted lots of natives. Did you remove European trees?
No, there was hardly any European trees here to start with anyway, and those up on the hill, there was an old house site there, and so I see them as sort of irrelevant historical relics. I just leave those, and they're not regenerating anyway. I think we stopped counting at about 20,000 and trees and shrubs we've put in over the years.
You mentioned hawthorn. Did you keep them or?
Oh, no, I don't keep hawthorn.
Yeah, so that's all those questions. So thank you very much again, Bree and Gerard, and thanks for those that have joined us. I really appreciate that, and we will.
thanks, Jason.
Stop that.